I don't know the writer's name, but this is a good story. I was introduced to the world of the paranormal when I was 5 years old. I didn't understand it other than I knew deep inside my gut that it was wrong and terrifying. In 2004, I had my fifth daughter at the age of 40, and so technically all her sisters were really old enough that they could pass as her mother. And when she was 8 months old, Laura had her first epileptic seizure. They're not what folks think of when you say the word epilepsy. Laura will make a choking sound and her eyes will roll back and she goes limp, becoming pale while her lips turn blue. That we panicked the first time we experienced one of her seizures is a gross understatement. In 2013, we moved from California to Arkansas for a more peaceful life. We found a large 2-story house built in the 1800s that used to belong to the town doctor. It was large and rambling, with pocket doors in the parlor and a wraparound porch, and it was situated in a beautiful, quaint old neighborhood. We knew it had recently become empty because this town is small and gossip is huge, and we had heard about a murder that had taken place in the home some 8 months earlier. It was a sad story of an adopted son killing his mother, and as usual, illegal drugs were involved. Before we could move in, we needed to do a major cleanup on the inside. It smelled of death and cat urine, among other things. We had to bring in a machine that removes all the odors out of the oxygen, but the process was so toxic and no one could enter the home immediately after the application. Well, I was a lover of history and antiques, and I didn't want to replace anything. So the floors were only sanded and restained and fresh painted. And we loved it for a little while. My mother-in-law and my handicapped nephew lived with us, and they used both of the downstairs bedrooms. My mother-in-law would accuse me of being in her room while my nephew would ask about the name of the cat that kept coming to his door at night. Though we didn't own a cat and I had no interest in violating my mother-in-law's privacy by sneaking into her bedroom, we considered the source. After a while, the arrangement started to grate on our nerves. My marriage became terribly strained. The household seemed to exist under a cloud of paranoia. I thought my mother-in-law and husband were conspiring against me behind my back, and after a few months of this, I was ready to take my daughter and leave the state. But unbeknownst to me, my mother-in-law got it in her head that my husband and I were doing the same to her. And if that wasn't bad enough, my husband developed a drinking problem that began to escalate. One evening, while he was asleep and I was reading in bed, there was a terrible loud crash in my daughter's room. We instantly thought that she was in the middle of a huge grand mal seizure. I took one giant leap and 2 steps to throw open Laura's door with my husband trailing behind me. And Laura was standing at her closet door across the room with a look of sheer terror on her face. And next to her bed was her wicker dressing table, the lamp swinging over the edge with the cord still plugged in behind the dresser. There was a stream of body powder leading from the dresser to the closet, and furniture had been cast about the room. We had a family meeting the next night where all the rage and emotional venom that had been building for months finally exploded. We were realizing that before we had taken up residence in this house, we had all gotten along fine. Was there a curse on this place? Once all the adults in the room had aired their grievances, my husband excused himself to check on our nephew. And a minute later, I heard him cry out. And by the time we reached my nephew's room, I was horrified to see my husband trying to hold upright a loaded-down 7-foot bookcase that was threatening to fall on top of my nephew in his wheelchair. Well, I quickly wheeled my nephew from the room, and once clear, my husband let the massive bookcase go crashing to the floor. Well, this was the last straw. The house was trying to kill us, if not literally by breaking bones, psychologically by turning all of us against each other. We got my mother-in-law and nephew out within a week, but finances kept my husband and I tethered to the place for another 2 months. Light switches going off and on, and apparitions of toddlers appearing in the hallways and around the door frames. It's a long list of crazy things. Every image seemed guaranteed to play out our worst fears. We slept a lot at my mother-in-law's for those last few weeks. When you tell a prospective home buyer that a place is haunted, they usually back away. Tell them there was a murder in the house and they will delete your number from their cell phone. We were lucky enough to sell the place to a gentleman who didn't believe in ghosts and had no fear of older crime scenes. From time to time, I check on the real estate listings, and I'm not surprised to see that our former home is on the market every few months. Thankfully, the house and all its secrets are no longer our concern.